Thank you everyone for coming to my game. I'm so glad you could make it. Can I kill Link yet? No, you cannot kill Link yet. We haven't even started yet. You find yourself in a wonderful land called Abello. Can I hang Link yet? Maybe later. We'll get back to that. But for now, just chill. Just chill. You find yourself in a wonderful town called Abello. What do you want to do? You can look to your left and right. You'll see a shop and a couple houses that you can interact with, as well as a well that you can interact with as well. I cast Eternal Darkness. Why is... Okay. Roll for it. Fuck. Okay, so while casting Eternal Darkness, you actually happen to make it so that it never turns night again. Good work. Link, what would you like to do? Die? Please? Dad? When do I get to kill Link? May the friendos, Newbornkilik here, welcoming you back to another awesome Zelda mod review. Now today we're going to be taking a look at The Legend of Zelda Master of Time, done by the great, the amazing Don Camillo. Or Don Camillo. It's probably Don Camillo. Not even entirely sure, but link will be in the description. If you enjoy this review of the mod or the gameplay in the background, definitely go check it out. For those of you that don't know, a mod of a game is essentially when you use the engine of a pre-existing game to create a new experience or something new within that game. It's exactly what we find here in The Legend of Zelda Master of Time. Without giving away too much at the very beginning, I can definitely say that this mod has about 15 to 20 hours of gameplay depending on how quickly you're going through it. Very interesting story in my opinion, with a very, we'll say, different and decisive ending. Honestly, I think that's one of the best parts about this mod, is the fact that it's not afraid to do what other mods would not do. This is an ending you would never, ever see in The Legend of Zelda at all. You would never see an ending like this. With that said, there are multiple endings, 3 endings in fact, all with varying levels of oddity or hilarity if you're me. I laughed really hard at one of the endings, the quote-unquote good ending. I thought it was super funny, but you know, to each their own, I suppose. Moving on to the story, I'm just going to read the blurb that the creator has made for themselves. After saving both Hyrule and Termina, Link found himself without a quest. He journeyed long and far without knowing what to do. He had thought a lot about the time manipulation he had done and asked himself if he was the real hero, if he was just a victim of these stories. The more his obsession of time had grown, the more it felt that time was slowing down until it froze completely, condemning his journey to an endless day. Just before passing out from exhaustion, Link finally found a new country. This, of course, is the country and area of Abello. Now, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers except for one specific area. You'll be warned, don't worry about it. Essentially, your quest is that Link is tasked with finding 6 medallions and returning the flow of time back to day and night, instead of just an eternal day. Someone, we don't really know who, actually stopped time in its entirety so that the monsters would stop spawning at night, because in Hyrule Field they spawn day and night, and in this country they do as well. So one of the answers to this entire problem was just stop time, which is definitely an interesting way to take care of it. I will give them that. After completing the first area, we find that the king of Abello has actually fallen silent, and the Zoras have kind of come in to help keep peace and order in the town of Abello. We also find out that maybe not everything is as it seems. There's some very suspicious activity. Cyan looking a little sus, not gonna lie. Now the Zoras, on top of keeping the peace and order in Abello town, have also offered very, very cheap milk to the inhabitants of the town. However, they won't sell it to anyone outside of the town, which is a bit strange if you ask me, and this is not where the oddities stop. The king's spirit even confirms these ideas very early in the game, that the Zora are not to be trusted. And you might be wondering, Newbornkilik, what is their motivation for doing so? Well, in their own words, they believe everyone should eat well. The game actually touches on a lot of very touchy subjects such as slavery, kidnapping, torture and murder, political corruption, and brainwashing. Wow. This is all, we're all following Link again, by the way. Just to put it into perspective how strange this game can be, the beta opened up essentially, you woke up in a hotel bed, which you still do in this game as well. But the reason that you don't have any of your items is explained because Link was an alcoholic in the beta and sold all of his items except the Master Sword for booze money, basically. I wish I were making that up. I couldn't put Link in that position, but the Don can. Speaking of a dark story, we have to look no further than the Butcher House, one of the best showcases of exactly how dark and grim the story can get. No joke, this is basically the Shadow Temple of this game. And when you actually look at how messed up the rest of the game is and how on the nose some of the kind of heirs of death can be, you'll find that that is no small task to kind of outdo that and become the Shadow Temple of that. It gets pretty dark in here. I could definitely see how you'd be really spooked or maybe even triggered at this place. Now, obviously, if you've played horror games and stuff like that and you're okay with that kind of imagery, it's not going to be much new here. But if you're like a kid, you know, coming from Ocarina of Time directly into this game, it could legitimately shock you. I was very surprised the first time that I came into the Butcher House on the beta. In fact, I'm going to include my reaction here of the beta of the Butcher House. Akara, welcome to the stream. Thanks for checking it out. Sorry if I said that name incorrectly, but welcome either way. Oh. Now, the lore of the Butcher House, you kind of have to go out of your way to find it. If you find your way to Abello Jail, you meet a woman there imprisoned in one of the cages who talks about how she shot a man in the head, burned him alive, smashed him with a hammer and blew him up with a bomb, and he still didn't die. Her last request for you is to go finish the job. Huh. What? However, when you actually get to the Butcher House, you realize this place is much worse than we had initially thought. Not only did she kidnap the husband, she managed to get a hold of the entire family. Cows being hung on hooks upside down, bleeding into the moat around the castle. What's up with that? Like, into the water supply of the town. Stop that. Immediately, you should be apprehended, which I suppose she was, but then they didn't actually save anyone there. You'd think that would be on the list to get the cows down. You can actually find the remains of part of this family around. They're around. That's all that I'm gonna say. Not to mention one of the kids is actually stuck in the oven. That's a yikes. But let's take a step back from that for a little while and actually get into some of the few spoilers that we're going to get into through the entire game. If you don't want to see spoilers, go to the timestamp on screen and you'll skip over all of the story spoilers that I'm going to be given. If you're looking to play the game for yourself, which I do recommend, skip ahead. Now that the formalities are out of the way, let's get into the dark story of this mod. As I said before, throughout the game, you'll notice that the Zora will only sell milk to the inhabitants of Abello. This is pretty suspicious to begin with. You'd think that, hey, a newcomer comes in, why not share a glass of milk with that guy too? Just strange. Kinda sus, in my opinion. This milk actually brainwashes people and eventually turns them into Zora themselves. Hence the brainwashing that we talked about earlier. So if you've noticed, we've gone through a lot of the things that are on the kind of triggering list up above, except for political corruption. Don't worry, we'll get to that in just a moment. As it turns out, the Zora are actually siphoning this milk from the guardian deity Jabu Jabu. This is a sacred creature to them, and they are essentially siphoning out milk from it to use for evil causes. Like, that's really, really dark. Now, is it ever explained why they're doing this? I have a sneaking suspicion that through the brainwashing, they're giving the milk in the first place to brainwash them, and then they kind of come to their facility and, you know, undergo the full treatment to become a Zora. It's just power. They just want power. I don't know if that's ever actually explained explicitly, but makes perfect sense to me. There are 3 endings in this game, and I will touch on the quote-unquote bad ending because I believe that's kind of the most ending type ending. It gives the most closure, in my opinion, to the entire game. Do you remember how I was talking about political corruption? That's where this comes in. As it turns out, Gebora, the owl that's been kind of guiding you through these temples, Knight, the fairy that you use, which is kind of a jackass, to be completely honest with you. He's not. Knight is not a nice fairy. He's very strict, very to the point, and very rude, in my opinion. And the Zora are getting tired of you asking questions. Turns out you were just a pawn in their plan. They end up ambushing Link, and when Link tries to fight back, Knight betrays Link. Link does get a trial. However, it is a trial from the people of Abello. If you remember, the people of Abello have been drinking this milk. They all find Link guilty. When asked if the king has any objections to this, of course the king does not talk, because the king is essentially brainwashed and dead as well. And with that, Link is hanged. They actually just straight up hang Link. And then they say, this is a bad ending. Boy, what? It should be noted that the bad ending is the ending you will most likely find. If you kind of go through the game as the game hints at, you will find the bad ending. I'm not going to tell you where exactly that path diverges, but just know there is no indication that there is, a separate ending to be had at all. To wrap it up, the Zoras really screwed you over in the bad ending. There's also a good ending and an unintended ending, which is a little bit more difficult to get to. Next, let's take a look at the aesthetics and look of this game. In my opinion, I think the textures look a-okay, especially when you compare them to the beta. The beta was very rough on textures, whereas the finished product of the game is not too bad in my opinion. A lot of people do disagree on this front. They think the textures look kind of icky. I think they're fine. But then again, my standards are relatively low, as I do understand that it is a mod, a fan project. They're not being paid for or anything. If I had spent money on it, then I might be a bit more critical, but hey, it's free. The game really lacks contrast in some darker areas, which makes it very difficult to see. Specifically in the butcher house and one of the mazes you have to go through, the contrast in there is very low. At first I thought this was just my monitor, but a lot of people in chat did kind of agree that this was a problem. There's plenty of verticality in the game. When you look across a landscape in the beta, you'd basically see a flat field. In the finished product, there's hills that add character to these areas and, dips and ups and downs, and it looks really nice compared to the beta. They did a great job, in my opinion, as far as crafting the world around them. The game is absolutely not afraid to show the realism of things like war and slavery and stuff like that. In one scene, there's even a little mini butcher house where the Moblins, which are at war with the Goron because the Gorons were forcing them into slave labor. Who'd have thought they might uprise at some point? Just be nice to each other. That's Newbornkilik's wisdom for the day. But anyway, they were cooking up the Goron for food. Gorons must taste pretty good. Volvagia, the boss of the fire temple, sure seemed to enjoy them. Maybe they're onto something. I don't know. Overall, the gameplay is pretty solid. It's The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, so of course it's going to be solid. It's pretty hard to mess that up. The temples are relatively well laid out, and it's not too difficult to know where you're supposed to go next. However, there are a couple times when you might be a little bit bamboozled. Mostly when you need to grab the Lens of Truth to go any further, and you wouldn't really know where the Lens of Truth is unless you actually talk to one of the NPCs who tells you that the Lens of Truth is in the sewers. Another very strong point of contention on this mod is that there are no bosses through the entire game. There are, mini bosses and puzzle challenges at the end of each temple, well, at the end of most temples, but there are no physical, boss fights, and I'm still very torn on this. On the one hand, reusing an old boss fight is just kind of meh, whatever. I fought this boss a million times. Let's move on about our day. Would it even make sense in this context anyway? I mean, we're not fighting an all-powerful warlock like Ganondorf. We're just fighting against the corruption of the land itself and the decisions that were made in the past that we are trying to fix. With no bosses, there's really no high points of the temple. I'm really torn on this. People like it, they dislike it. I see both points. I totally understand one way or the other. I do have some critiques in this area, however. For example, the creator just loves putting maximum range hook shots all over the place, and I never really understood this. I guess this is maybe anti-cheese measures, but I shouldn't have to stand halfway off of a platform to just make a hook shot with it. That doesn't feel good in my opinion. That's just a pet peeve of mine. I like to be able to walk up, whip out that hook shot, and move on about my day, nice and fluid, but instead in this mod, most of the time, I have to get close. Oh, didn't work. Can I get much? Oh, I fell off. Could have been super simple. Just bring it in a little bit. This happens with the hook shot and the long shot, so it's definitely a decision made by the creator. While we're talking about the tedious parts, I genuinely kind of disliked the Trial of Power. It's just enemy spam. Now this isn't necessarily so bad. You have the equipment to take care of it in this area, I believe, and I find myself rather enjoying the combat of Ocarina of Time and kind of, you have to read the entire room and figure out, okay, you have this much time to do it. It's this enemy, you have to keep this enemy in mind while they're doing that stuff. My problem is not with general combat rooms. My problem is with sand combat rooms. Sand sucks. Sand is hands down worse than ice in my opinion. The reason that sand sucks so much is not because it's more difficult to move. You can simply put on the hover boots and remedy that, or just kind of bunker down, put your shield up and really have a defensible position. My problem is the levers. They just don't stop spawning. Ever. They're always a threat. You cannot read where they're going to come from. I mean, they're always coming from around you. It just means that every so often you have to either take a little bit of health and ignore them, or do a spin attack that maybe you wouldn't want to do anyway, which could leave you open to a counterattack from another enemy. I really don't like levers. If they took levers out of this area, I think this area would be much better. There were some legitimately interesting times in this area where I had to, navigate around a re-dead with a Wallmaster trying to grab me. I'm just saying, that's interesting. Next up, we're talking about the music, and boy, these tracks slap. Almost all of them. 99.9% of the music in this game, amazing. It's a-okay. It's tops. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I love it. The exception of the fire area. Before that, though, check out the creator's channel for even more of that music. I'm actually using the game's music in this video right now, so if you enjoy this music, go check out the creator's channel. Got an entire playlist of songs from the game. This piece that I dislike, part of it makes sense, and it didn't really bother me at first. In fact, I kind of liked it at first, but you spend so much time in this area. Not my favorite song. I totally understand it. I think that it fits with the area and kind of the dissonance going on between the Moblins and the Gorons, and it really represents the hard work that they're being forced into. This song is almost being forced on you, just as the slave labor is being forced on the Moblins. From a design point, it makes sense, I get it. That doesn't mean I like it, and it gets grating very fast. Some of you may or may not know, I have a really big soft spot for teleportation songs in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and I would say this even translates over to Master of Time as well. My favorite is the teleportation song for the Abello Town teleport. Super great. I don't really know what it was. It sounded like royal and kind of like sprinkled with a little bit of, ooh, something bad might be going on here. Just a little bit of a side thing. I love teleportation songs. I love bringing them up in videos. This one slaps, okay? Chat even agreed. The teleportation songs, good songs, okay? While we're at it, I suppose we should take a peek at the Discord and see what their thoughts were on the game. The general consensus overall is that it is a great mod. However, the ending is really, again, this part where we're not sure. The ending falls flat. You can't phrase it better. They lost interest towards the end. Great mod, but it felt like the end, they stopped taking it seriously. It's clear the creator stopped taking it seriously towards the end. Started to lose interest towards the end. I understand that criticism. A lot of the other criticisms were stuff like, it seemed like it was just dark to be dark sometimes, and I can definitely understand that. I didn't mind the ending so much. I thought the ending was a-okay. I felt like the ending had to happen how it happened. The bad ending, okay, had to happen that way so that it wasn't expected. If you expected the bad ending of this game, which is, again, the ending you will probably get, it wouldn't have hit the same. You would have seen it coming, or you would have been like, okay, the game is going to end. The game ends very abruptly. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing given the artistic choices that the creator decided to take, but I understand that it's not the Hollywood ending that everyone may like. These are just some opinions from Discord. If you'd like to join in on them, hey, join the Newbornkilik Discord. Overall, the game gives a more mature look at The Legend of Zelda, which is something that I honestly have wanted for quite a while. The game has great gameplay, as we might anticipate. As we had already talked about, the ending may feel a bit rushed for some players. I understand it. Now that I'm thinking about it, the ending was relatively the same in the beta. The game ended at the same time in the beta versus in the final product. So I really don't think that it was necessarily the creator losing interest or anything like that. I just kind of thought about that. I could be wrong. That's just my 2 cents on the situation. Overall, this is a solid mod and relatively easy to get running on your computer. If I had to give it a rating, I would give it an 8.5. I never really felt bored playing this game, and at the end of the day, that's kind of the entire idea behind playing video games, is just to relax and find an enjoyable experience. Sure, there were some moments that were almost tedious. I would say the Trial of Power is probably the closest the game ever got to being really annoying to me, but even then, I'm pretty sure that is an optional area. The Legend of Zelda Master of Time is a truly, in my opinion, unique experience that I would really recommend. Some people might be put off by the ending, but I get it. I understand why the ending is the way that it is, and sometimes you don't get a happy ending. Sometimes you don't get the ending where Link saves the day. To quote the good ending, I guess this is a minor spoiler, sometimes it's just best to flee from an overbearing situation. World's rough out there, guys, but I hope you can find some enjoyment out of my videos at least. Anyway, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I do appreciate it. It helps me out an awful lot. Thank you so much to my patrons, channel members, Twitch supporters, all my subs. Oh my god, you guys have been so crazy, so great over on Twitch. Thank you so much for that, by the way. I'm really enjoying streaming over there. If you like some gameplay of The Legend of Zelda Master of Time, you can find it on the gameplay channel, or you can check it out live at twitch.tv/Newbornkilik, where we'll be streaming some more awesome Zelda mods in the future. Anyway, I'm Newbornkilik, and I will see you in the next one. I'm out.